XL Vets would like to invite you to join us for a webinar on the 10th of June on getting the most out of the second half of the dairy breeding season. So Dorian, what will we cover?
We'll be covering how to avoid that lull in calving in the month of March.
Michelle.
I'll be speaking about where technology is going to fit into the Irish farm.
Kevin.
And I'll be speaking about what veterinary inputs are required to make sure that the breeding season is kept as tight as possible.
So don't miss it, the 10th of June at 8. Thank you. Good evening. We're here now, it's the 10th of June, and the 10th of June is approximately cows AI today are going to be calving on St. Patrick's Day. We're going to look tonight at how we can get the most out of the second half of the breeding season, because let's face it, how we make money as dairy farmers and the vets who work with them is by getting more cows calved in a shorter time. So we want to pull back those late calvers and minimise any cows calving in June and even stop cows calving later on. So my name is Donal Lynch. I'm a veterinary practitioner in an XL Vet practice in Tullamore in County Offaly. We work approximately half our time with dairy cows and the other half with suckler cows. And we have seen a big expansion in recent years. And I think that's probably the same across the whole country. So I'm joined here tonight with 3 other experts in their field. So Dorian Corridan. Dorian, you work with Munster Bovine. You also breed limousine bulls. What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
That's correct, Donal. On a day-to-day basis, what we do in Munster Bovine is we help herd owners, both dairy and suckling, to achieve the best possible genetic gain they can achieve, to try and get the best fertility, high 6-week calving rates, and also to try and maximise the production from the point of view of selecting the best females to keep. Also in milk recording, to ensure herd owners get the best out of the milk recording, and also the bulk milk testing. And
you also put a lot of effort into breeding bulls.
At home, yeah. I love farming at home there in the evenings.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. A lot of us here farm as well. I myself, I keep a few suckler cows, and it certainly keeps us grounded in what we do.
That is for sure.
So, Kevin O'Sullivan, a vet in Glasslyn, another XL Vet practice. What do you do every day?
Yeah, well, we're based in Bandon, which we're the kind of home of the dairy cows at the moment. We have a large practice, 11 vets, 8 of us doing full-time dairy work nearly. So at the moment we're quite busy on the breeding season, doing a lot of scanning, confirming pregnancies, trying to get cows that haven't been seen bulling, trying to get them going. And that's what we're doing a lot at the moment. So even though the spring rush is over, you're still very busy? Yeah, we're kind of in that transition period between a bit of the spring rush and the breeding season. This time of the year, May and June, can be quite busy. Which will be similar to a lot of dairy farmers. Absolutely. Our last expert is Michelle Crowley. Michelle, you work with MSD Animal Health Intelligence. You put a lot of effort into heat detection collars in the last 6 to 12 months, but you also milk 140 cows at home. You're busy?
Yes, as you say, we're all very much deep-rooted into farming. So MSD Animal Health bought Antelica company that's in the monitoring technology sphere in 2019. We're delighted to be involved in it. It's this hugely exciting market and a very high growth rate. There's been an explosion of it really in the breeding season 2021 for 3 main reasons. That, you know, it drives profitability on your farm. You have the right type of cow and the right number of days of milk. Labour is a huge challenge, as we know, and this will do a lot of the monitoring for you and pick out the anestrous cows, the cystic cows, the cows in heat and so on. And it's a 24/7 monitoring of your herd. So before you put your wellies on in the morning, you know exactly what's going on outside.
And we're all certainly seeing a lot more technology on farms over the last number of years. And I think it is going to be the way forward. There is going to be a lot more of it. It's going to become very much a part of our lives. Last week, the group of us here, we went to one of Kevin's clients in Bandon, Tom Allen. Tom is milking approximately 200 cows. And we just spent some time there with his cows, heifers and calves, and discussed some of the things we see and some of the issues that arise when you're on a live working farm. So we might go over now to some of that footage. And just before we do, I'd like to invite everybody watching to contribute some questions. So there is a chat function there on the screen. You can type in questions. We won't promise to answer all the questions, but we'll do our best to cover as many as we can. the main aim of this evening is we want to look, how can we help you get the most out of your cows next year? In my head, there's two big subjects we need to talk about today. Number one is nutrition, and number two is heat detection. So Dorian, nutrition. Nutrition, obviously the cows have to be eating enough to get them in calf. Explain, tell me more about this.
Okay, so I mean, we're here the 10th of June, Donald, and with a very difficult April and May. So I mean, firstly with grazing conditions and then with growth rates. And now we're in a good position where we farm more grass, you know what I mean, and cows are going into very heavy covers, you know what I mean, because an awful lot of them are going in 17, 18, 1900. So the key is to get grass right for the rest of the season, because grazing conditions were so difficult for the last 3 or 4 weeks. So I mean, we are where we are. So we have choices really. The big choices we have is we can either top, bale it or primo.
At this stage, what we're worried about is to get the quality into the grass. We probably by and large have loads of grass at the moment. The quality is the issue we need to manage.
Yeah, we need to get the quality in and get the intakes in.
Intakes and the amount of grass was a big issue. Like lots of farms did have an issue where they just didn't have enough grass. How much grass does the cow need? So like we look at a cow here and say, pick this cow there. She's heading for 600 kilos. She's, I suppose, maybe given 28 litres of milk. What does she need to eat?
Okay, so she's given 28 litres of milk. Take a 600 kilo cow. They need to get in 19 kilos of dry matter a day. So if you have a cow that's calved, I mean 7 or 8 weeks, I mean, depending on your grass quality, she could get in 7 to 8 kilos of grass. I mean, which will give us, I mean, 2 kilos of concentrates to keep her going. However, if she's in her first 6 weeks after calving, intakes haven't been that high, and the grass is a poor enough quality, I mean, or we don't have it, we could be down 12, 13,
or if the weather's a problem and she's standing under the ditch or doesn't go out, or
Absolutely.
if she's a long distance to walk.
You're down 12 or 1300, so you're talking about, I mean, feeding her up to 5 kilos. So it depends on input, output, what's the grass quality like, and how long is the cow calved to be able to take in the intakes.
Okay, Kevin, what are we likely to see if there is issues with nutrition, if they're not getting enough? What are the problems you're going to see as a vet on farm?
From a vet's point of view, we're going to see on the fertility aspect is that you're going to see an estrus and poor expression of estrus by the cows. So when we come scanning, you'll find inactive ovaries or maybe cystic ovaries or just cows not showing heat. I suppose from a farmer's point of view, you might find that the solids are decreasing. Milk protein, if that's low, you're certainly going to see an issue with energy intakes. But from a vet's point of view, I think the biggest problem is the not showing the heats is the biggest problem.
Okay, so as a vet in practice, we want to know then, what do you want to see? What do you want a farmer to put in front of you if you're doing a fertility visit at the moment?
Well, at the moment, towards the end of this, or I suppose we're halfway through the breeding season now, we want to see anything that hasn't already been bred, or anything that maybe has a late calver that we're trying to advance, and to make sure that she doesn't lose any time for next year. So what we will be looking at is, a cow that has maybe health cleanings, cow that has had maybe displacement or any health issue, even mastitis in the early postpartum. So we'd look at those, and obviously anyone that maybe has an unusual cycle pattern. Cystic cows could be going to dairy every week, and we'd like to go and see them and treat them appropriately then.
Okay, Michelle, will Tom's collars identify these cows that Kevin wants?
Absolutely, that's the beauty of it. We were talking earlier on, Donal, about, calving has become quite easy now. We've easy calvers, we see cows calved rather than calving. And then we've had a long spring and we've challenges like weather that we can do nothing about. And then we go into a breeding season and we're tired. And farmers will say again and again that they actually dread breeding probably more than they do calving now. And it's subjective, but with this, it's objective. She's in heat or she's not. When she's in heat, it'll give you the countdown of the breeding window. So it'll tell you when to go in with conventional semen, when to go in with sex semen. It just takes the work out of it. It'll pick up the irregular cycles, the cow not cycling. And the beauty of that is if you couple that with a drafting system, you can be in the parlour dreaming about a county final and your cow is drafted out for you.
Kevin is coming tomorrow
Absolutely.
morning. It'll draft them.
Yeah, you can schedule to draft them.
I think technology is going that way. Like into the future, there's going to be a lot more technology on farm, and we see it as it is. Like we've seen milking robots come in. Like that was something we didn't see 10 years ago. I know in our practice now, there's loads of them around. We see automatic calf feeders, but not everybody has collars at the moment. So Dorian, what can we do to help pick up these cows if we don't have collars at this stage?
We still have a good 2 to 3 inseminations to get into cows before the year end. and the objective is to keep at least 82% of the cutting cows. So how do we get those to 2 to 3 inseminations into them? So the first thing is cows not bred. Get out your vet, check them, synchronization, fixed time AI. They're absolutely crucial. Next thing to look at is, are you getting enough repeats back? As each day, I mean, you should know how many repeats you are actually getting back. Are you actually getting enough of them back? As whatever way we twist or turn it, we will not get more than 60% conception rate in cows on average.
And you will have details for us later on exactly the numbers that out of 100 cow herd, what you should be getting for what week of the breeding season.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very good.
And the other thing, Donald, at this time of the year, cows are going to be calving down after St. Patrick's Day in that bit higher body condition score. So what we want is easy calving, short gestation bulls. As we've shot gestation bulls that are -5 days, they'll take 10 days after pregnancy.
Okay, so that could easily bring a cow to was AI'd today. It could bring her back calving as her comrades were AI'd
10 days ago.
Exactly.
Absolutely, Donald.
Very good.
And the other thing we identify is sires that are doing well infertility-wise. So I mean, and there are 2 ultimate panels there: ultimate dairy for the guys who haven't got enough replacements yet, and ultimate beef. So they're the highest fertility semen sires available, the shortest gestation, but also good EBI and good carcass.
And we're aiming to get the best results out of them. The idea is make life better and easier next year.
100%.
Absolutely. Okay, at this stage I think we'll move into the yard and we're going to look at some of the other things we can do with heat detection, how we can identify cows. We look at more the specifics of cows, look at room and fill and body condition score. Doreen, how many cows should we have served at this stage out of 100 cows?
Oh, if we're 6 weeks in, Donald, we should have them all served. I mean,
Okay.
unless we had some very late calving cows. So if you have 100 cow herd, you should have them all served at this stage. And even if you haven't served, just get out your vet, synchronisation, fixed time AI. They'll be all inseminated in 10 days. And if you're at AI for 6 weeks, you should have somewhere between 36 to 40 repeats. If you'd use sex semen for the first 3 weeks, you'll probably have 46 to 50 repeats.
Okay. One of the questions we have here is about when is the best time to scan? Kevin Dorian said you should get your vet out to scan. When should you be getting out to scan?
Well, around now is an excellent time to start the scanning. Even this morning before I came here, I scanned for a client of ours. He'd 60 cows that were over 30 days pregnant or 30 days served, and he's 5 cows that hadn't been bred at all yet. So we scanned all of them. The 5 cows that hadn't been bred, we synchronized them, and so that they were guaranteed to be served in 10 days' time. And then out of the 60 that he assumed were pregnant, we found 5 that weren't pregnant. 2 of them had early embryo loss, and the other 3 just proved not pregnant. So we injected them to make sure that they come around in the next week. So it's a great time to scan now, because those cows may not have been spotted for another 3 weeks, and that all adds up, costs money. The other thing, we identified a couple of sets of twins as well. So it's a great time to scan, really. You know where you are. You've a good picture of what's going on.
So like you picked up 10% of those cows that were meant to be in calf that aren't really well worth doing. The cows you pick up there that haven't been seen bulling, synchronising them at this stage, it gets in 2 extra opportunities, maybe 3 extra opportunities to AI them, which is that's very important at this time of the year, to get a serve into these cows early on. Do your best to get them at calf.
Yeah, it's well worth doing, because some of these cows, they're probably the later calf in the herd, but you might start bringing them back. You know, they might go in calf maybe 42 days after they last calved. So you might save 40 days, or even if they didn't go in calf the first cycle, if they go in calf the second cycle, you still have saved time.
Okay. When we were down with Tom, the weather was just changing. He was at silage that day. The silage was mowed and waiting to be picked up. We kind of forget now, because the last week or so we've had very good weather and a lot of silage has been cut. But before that, it was a very tough spring and early summer. Grass growth was a big problem. I was out on a farm myself today, and we were just looking at body condition score on cows, and there's a big variation. Doreen, how do we manage these late calvers?
And the big thing with the late calvers, Don, is especially the ones that are just calved 6 weeks and a little older and a little over, their intake's not up to what it should be. So a cow calf since the 1st of February, she'll take in 18 kilos of grass dry matter, no bother. But a cow calf the last 6 to 8 weeks, she's down to about 12. So she needs actually concentrates.
And she could look quite good. She could be in quite a good body condition
That's
score.
it, Donald, because you look at a cow at the moment, the cow calving since February, you say, God, she's just about okay. But she's actually increasing in body condition score, while the later calving cow is looking better, but she's actually losing body condition score. So looks can be deceiving.
And often these later calving cows that are over-conditioned is a bigger problem than cows that are under-conditioned. We can do something about the under-condition.
Absolutely. And that we saw Kevin's visit now mid-season is absolutely super for treating these cows that are not yet bulled. And also the scan for the early cows that we thought they were pregnant. As we had some bad weather there, do you know what I mean? With a lot of heavy rain and heat detection was that bit difficult. And the big thing with scanning now, Donald, we have an opportunity to get 2 serves into those cows before the season ends.
Okay, another point there, just to do with the weather and how things change very quickly on a dairy farm. When we were there, it was just at the end, the grass growth just been tight. But in the last week all over the country, grass growth has gone mad. Does that give us a concern about quality?
Absolutely. Do you know what I mean? Grass has just exploded. So what we basically need to do is try and grass measure as much as you can. Take out the paddocks that need to be taken out. Do you know what I mean? Top if you have to, or primo. It's probably a mixture of all trees. As if we get grass right now, we'll have it right for the rest of the season.
Okay. When we were down with Tom, we also went in and we looked at the cows. We looked at some individual cows, we looked at body condition score, and we looked at heat detection. So we might go over to that video now where we're going to look at these particular cows. Kevin, that cow there beside you, what would you comment on her?
Comment on her, she probably is just a little bit light, but we know that she's calved a while, so she's probably at a stage in her lactation where she's beginning to put on weight again. So you can just see that she has a nice bit of cover on the short ribs, and the tail head is a little bit on you know, sparse enough covered, but probably is okay for breeding at the moment. She's probably as low as you'd like to go for it.
Kevin, what do you think of her gut fit?
Gut fit is good enough, in fairness. When we just after bringing her in from the field, so that would explain that. But and the covers were quite fibrous outside there today, so that would help. But sometimes you see definitely during that bad weather we got there last month that the gut fill was terrible.
Okay, the next cow behind her, she's the first calved heifer. These animals are often struggling a little bit, and I suppose in fairness, if you look at her and you look at her coat, she does look like she's struggling.
Yeah, definitely her coat could be better. She's a bit, we'll call it foxy down here, a bit red, and she hasn't lost her winter coat. Feeling her condition is quite good, her body condition is quite good, but you'd want to be wary of that. How long is she calved? If she's only a short time calved, she could still have a nice little bit of fat, but isn't able to use it and could still be struggling. So we have to make sure that is.
And it's fair to say she's a very isolated cow in this herd.
Absolutely, but you do see that in the first calvers. Sometimes you can just see that they struggle, especially she may well be performing quite well milk-wise, and she's just finding it hard on it.
So I suppose, Kevin, this first cow, she could actually be increasing her body condition score.
Yeah.
While this first calved heifer that's not calved that long, she could actually be decreasing.
Yeah, and that's the key point when you are body condition scoring. You have to take into account their stage of pregnancy or their stage of lactation or how close they are to having calved. It makes a huge difference.
Okay, so overconditioning late calving cows is obviously a problem. But Doyne, why is it a problem? What is the issue with that last cow?
Okay, late calving cows, what we're trying to do, Donald, with late calving cows, we're trying to bring them forward a month or so forth, as we're trying to retain as many cows as possible. And late calving cows have 2 issues. The first issue they have is they're over-conditioned at calving. And over-conditioned cows have reduced intakes. The second thing is, even normal cows, in their first 6 weeks after calving, their intakes are reduced. They won't hit peak intakes until 7 to 8 weeks after calving. And these late calving cows now, so I mean, they've over-conditioned, so they've reduced intake. They're in their first 6 weeks after calving, so they've further reduced intake. And often at this time, herd owners are thinking of cutting out concentrates. So what we basically need to do is think of these late calvers. If you can feed them extra in the parlour, by all means. If you cannot, reduce the output, put them on once a day. As done, it's all about matching input with matching output.
So these are the cows that might be suffering at this stage of the year. They're already late calving, so they're late going back and calf, and they're going to be struggling even to go back and calf at this stage.
And they look okay, Donald.
That's
because
the
they're in very good condition, they're losing that bit of weight. While a lady like this is actually gaining weight, but she looks in poorer body condition.
We might be more inclined to add in a few more kilos to her in the parlour than we would be to the back cow because of the condition she's in.
Absolutely.
Kevin and Dorian, talk to me about the different options we have.
Yeah, there's loads of options. We'll go through a few of them. But, tail paint is quite good. A lot of people are using it. But I suppose the problem at this time of year is at the end of the season or towards the end of the breeding season, that we've already layered colour on colour and colour on colour, so that we need to just be aware that the paint mightn't come off as easy. So it's very important to change to a new colour, and just apply on the tail head here like that, one strip, and keep it like that, and that'll be very easy to see if she comes bulling. And even if you're letting the bull out, the bull will knock that off, and at least you'll see that she's been cycling.
It is, because if we take the 10th of June, Kevin, some guys are breeding since the middle of April. Do you know what I mean? More guys are breeding since the 1st of May. So a lot of guys are breeding between 6 to 8 weeks. So there is paint gone on for 6 to 8 weeks. And then if they did the pre-breeding, they have it as well. And also, our activity is down to a third of what it actually was.
And Dorian, there's different types of heat detection aids that suit different ones. Where do patches come in?
As in those stretch cards, Donald, we have them there. They're absolutely superb at this time of the year because activity has gone way down, right? So pick a really, really dry day where the cow skin is really, really dry, right? And apply them. And they work exceptionally well because they last you, for over 3 weeks, and you can really pick up the ones that's actually in heat with the stretch card.
So Kevin, talk to me about some of the other options we have.
Yeah, you could use the spray-on tail paint or the crayons. Crayons, you need to just make sure you break the seal and put it on. We put it on this one just behind the scratch card. You can go up the small at the front. Or if you're using a spray-on, it's just the same as the paint. And just put a good layer there on the tail head as well. Some people are using that on top of the emulsion paint. They find that it comes off better, especially this time of year. And again, changing colours is very useful.
Just do something different, Donald.
The important thing is the idea of tail paint is it's to be rubbed off when either a bull or another cow jumps on it. So that's where it should be put. It should be put where the brisket of the bull or the other cow is going to rub it off. The obvious thing we should be looking at here is a vasectomized bull really comes into play at this stage. Okay, so a vasectomized bull, obviously he's going to have to be done 6 weeks before you need him. But if you have him done and have him there ready, he's an ideal candidate to go out and show when cows are bulling. Kevin, you have 2 different options there of chin balls to go on cows. Yeah,
one is a rattle base where you just get a different colour fits in here, it fits onto, under the bull's neck. The other is just the chin ball, where it just has to be topped up through here every so often. Bulls can be trained to that, it can be fairly easy to do. And you just change colours, and a cow that will actually be going on heat will be well marked by the bull. It's not just one little mark. There'll be a lot of marks.
I suppose though, Kevin, just some things that I'd see myself when using vasectomized bulls. My personal view would be that the first one you showed with the block that goes onto it, my attitude toward them is they should be thrown in the bin. They're pure useless. Okay, I would stick with the other.
I'd be inclined to agree with you there, Donald, because an active bull will use the complete block in one cow.
On one day, one cow is gone. So they're not really practical.
No.
I suppose some practical tips I would have to just say, it's worth putting a ring in the bull's nose so it's easy to catch him when you want to change the paint in the chin ball. But also to remember that a vasectomized bull is like an ordinary bull. The first year, when he's a young bull, he's fierce active. But in the second year, he's a lot less active. So it's probably worth having a new vasectomized bull every year. Would that be what you would recommend?
Practically everyone that we do vasectomized bulls for, we do them every year. We don't recommend holding on to them. We find that, maybe the fact that they're not purebred or they're not handled as much, they're certainly wilder than a purebred bull, so they're just more difficult to handle. There's no real benefit holding them on for another 12 months. The operation is not that expensive that you need to do for 3 or 4 years.
Okay, before we move on to our next video where we look at the more modern heat detection systems and collars, we have several questions that we want to try and cover. There is a question here about the conception rate after fixed time AI on non-cycling cows. I suppose, Dorian, we should look at that with a view towards non-cycling cows versus cows not seeing bulling. Okay, there is a perception out there, and historically there's been a perception that we haven't got great conception rates out of synchronization programs and fixed time AI.
That's correct, Donald, because if we look at cows now not bred, a high proportion of them are cows that actually were cycling but not picked up. and then there's a portion of them that were not cycling. And absolutely, we'd recommend synchronization, fixed time AI, and they're all going to be AI'd within 10 days. Now, 2 important points here. First point is the synchronization program that's being used is a different program to what was used in the past. That's what we're talking about is a preacher-receiver device, 2 doses of prostaglandin, 2 doses of GnRH. So it's a program that'll cost about €30, and that's far superior than what we have in the past. Second thing then is that at the moment we have this Ultimate series, which are sires that are short gestation, and they're the highest fertility sires we have. So these are the bulls, that they're actually used with them. And it's important that you actually take out your vet to examine the cows before you synchronize them, because some of these cows are dirty. They may want something like Metrocure before they're actually synchronized. And also, if some cows are thin or lame or so forth, we don't expect results from those. And for cows that are cycling normally but were missed, we'll expect normal conception rates. And Tagish demonstrated that in a trial with 3,500 cows. Other cows then, that we're trying to get back after calf, and if nutrition is right, their calf 30 days, we'll get 30% conception, 40 days, 40%. But the important thing, Donald, we're getting them bred, and they'll be repeated again in 3 weeks, and we'll get two doses of AI into them before the end of the season.
And conception rates, in my experience, with those 2 AIs, end up being very high with the 2 cycles. By the time you go with the first cycle after your synchronization and anything to repeats, your conception rate at that stage ends up being very high.
And you'll gain a month on it.
And even with your bull, as you say, when you're using a bull with a shorter gestation, that's another big advantage.
Absolutely, you'll gain a month in those cows.
What would your experience be, Kevin?
Yeah, in my practice, we find that we get relatively good response to the fixed time, but where we aren't getting the results is when the wrong cow has actually been selected for it. So you have maybe a cow that isn't long enough calved and in poor body condition, maybe really high lactating cow, a lot of stress under her, as you said, lame. Those ones, they really, a bit of time is required and nutrition, and maybe even go down the route of the once a day milking for those cows. All that the synchronization program is doing is just getting her ovaries in sync, but all the other things are very important. Some of these cows that are losing body condition, they don't have enough insulin in their blood, not enough glucose in the blood to drive the ovary. So you're going to get poor quality eggs no matter what synchronization program you use. So you really should be, selecting the cow right before you do it.
So really what we're trying to do is similar to what sheep farmers do, they flush their yolks. We're trying to, with our cow, put in more energy than she needs to get her into a positive energy balance to make her breeding system work.
Absolutely, and I think those cows it is very successful in. But again, if you have a really highly bred Holstein Friesian producing 40, 50, 60 litres of milk, she is concentrating on milk production. She's not concentrating on fertility.
It's a big ask to get her back in calf.
Absolutely.
At this stage.
And the other thing, Donald, is we're trying to keep 82% of our current herd. So every cow we keep, it saves us having to put in a replacement heifer. So you're saving on the cost of the replacement heifer. Plus any cow you keep are going to have at least 100 kilos of milk solids, more than the replacement heifer. So I wouldn't hesitate whatsoever in spending €30 on the fixed time synchronization to keep those extra cows in the herd.
And Dorian, our most productive cows are our 3rd, 4th lactation cows?
Absolutely, absolutely, because the 3rd lactation cow will produce 22% more than the first calver. And now, Donald, in the year of carbon, we're trying to keep cows for 5.5 lactations.
And we want each cow producing as much as she can.
Absolutely.
What's the right replacement rate?
In a herd that's stable and not expanding, 18% is ideal, 9% for empty cows, and the other 9% for poor production, SCC, lameness, and so forth.
Okay. Michelle, as a dairy farmer, are you addressing this at the moment? Are you addressing cows that haven't been seen bulling?
Yeah, some might argue we have a high cost system, but we really feel it's so important to get the 85%, 90% 6-week calving rate. We actually fixed time AI our heifers and our cows, and we've monitoring technology on both. And we just want them to calve when we want them to calve. We want a compact calver. What we used to have stock bulls in the yard, and we've 3 young kids, and we're lucky to have grandparents alive and a farm labourer. So health and safety, we just got rid of the bull, and we're all AI now. But when we did have bulls, what we used to do with the later calvers was use what Dorian was speaking about there, those short gestation bulls. Like we used to have Angus bulls that could go 5 or 6 days over a gestation period. And if you have a short gestation bull there, you have a net gain of 10 days straight away.
Yeah, I know certainly in our own case, I'd be pushing clients now that if any cows that haven't been AI'd at this stage, we don't waste time with any other treatments. We look at them, examine them, and if everything is okay, we synchronise them for fixed time AI and get them served. There's several other questions that have come in there, so maybe Dorian, once a day AI versus twice a day AI, technician versus DIY, what are the advantages, disadvantages, what are the pitfalls?
The whole thing with insemination, Donald, we have a nice window to inseminate. We have when the cow is standing and up to 12 hours later. So if your technician is coming into the yard every day at 9 o'clock, inseminate everything that you'd seen up to 9 o'clock that morning. And that works very well. The most important thing is not to delay insemination. Because some herd owners delay them until the following morning. Right? While it's not the life of the semen that's the important thing, it's the life of the egg in the cow. So what we want is when she's standing and up to 12 hours later. And when cows are more than 12 hours after in the heat, they're too late for AI. As often, herd owners ring up their conception rate isn't high enough, and you ring the technician, he'd say, Dorian, I'm seeing a lot of cows in that farm passing bloody slime. That means they're presented too late for AI.
Okay. I suppose there's lots of arguments about AI and technician versus DIY. I suppose one point I'd make as a vet myself is don't be afraid to ask for help. If you think things aren't going well, there's plenty of other people. You can ask a peer, another farmer who does his own AI. You can talk to your technician. If you have a lot of heifers that need for fixed time AI, a lot of us, and I do my own AI, a lot of us would struggle when we wouldn't be doing it every day to AI 20 heifers. Don't be afraid to get the technician in that day. Kevin, would you comment on that?
Yeah, I think dairy farmers are too busy nearly to be doing their own AI now. It's a job in itself just to pick out the cows that are cycling. I think, a lot of them would benefit of getting a professional in to do it. And as you say, if you're using any form of synchronization program, I think getting the experienced hand in there is you're going to get a percentage better results, and every percent counts now. So I would be thinking that you get a silage contractor in to mow the silage, you should get the professional into with your AI service as well.
And we're certainly seeing that in bigger herds, that they move more towards the technician-based AI system.
Absolutely, Donald. If you have 100 cows, you're inseminating 100 of them in the first 3 weeks. 40 of them in the second 3 weeks and 20 of them in the third 3 weeks. So you really are starting without any pre-season training whatsoever.
Absolutely. And the technician has, I don't know what a technician is doing, but some technicians could be doing several hundred in a day. So in the first day, they're up to speed and they're doing it all year round in little bits.
That's right, and they have the muscles built up in their arms.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, whereas when I go to AI my heifer, I mightn't have AI'd a heifer for the last 3 months. And then I suppose it's just to look at keeping the flask right, and there's a whole load of little things that can go wrong. It'll be such a big cost. So I think the big point I'd say out of this is don't be afraid to seek help. If you think things are going wrong, if you see more repeats coming in after 3 weeks, be watching. Once the 3 weeks are up, be watching for the right amount of repeats. So Dorian, if we're in a 100 cow herd, how many repeats should we be getting?
In a 100 cow herd, in the first 3 weeks we'd be expecting 40 repeats. Out of the 100, that's going very well.
So that's kind of 2 a day.
Yeah.
So if you're getting any more than 2 a day per 100 cows you have, it's time to be looking and investigating that.
If you're using sex semen for the first 3 weeks, you might end up with 2.5, Donald. Right? And then for the second 3 weeks, you'll be down to about, less than 20 repeats, which is 1 a day.
At this stage of the breeding season, have we moved away from sex semen? Is it?
Oh, we have. An awful lot of sex semen was done in the first 10 days, especially in synchronised heifers and synchronised bunch of cows. Where we're on now is there is still room for herd owners who shot the replacements. For this week, because if they used those shot gestation sires, they'll have cows calving between the 10th and the 17th of March if they inseminate them in the next week. Otherwise, then we're on to beef sires, so we want easy calving, short gestation, and high carcass weight to ensure the herd owner who buys the calf, can actually make a return on it.
But we want the calves out of them early and easily.
Absolutely. So it's easy calving first, short gestation second, and then high carcass weight.
Okay. We'll just look at one other question that came in there. There was a question about AIing cows that are already in calf. So we've this issue there with irregular repeat intervals, and cows will say that come in 12 days after they were AI'd. Where do we stand there?
Well, the issue is that inseminating cows that are already in calf, it is going to increase their embryonic death. Right? And we see 2 forms of irregular heats on farms. Some herd donors inseminate them today, and then they feel they've gone a bit early, and they inseminate them again tomorrow. While that double AI, can decrease conception rate a little bit, but what really decreases conception rate if you're inseminating pregnant animals. And at this time of the year, I empathise with farmers because they're looking at her, isn't she on or isn't she on?
Yeah.
They're afraid not to inseminate her, right? So that's where the early scan comes in, right? And also we've topped the game at the moment with the heat detection, right? And if you're really struggling with the heat detection and you've switched to tail paint and you've switched to scratch cards and you still have too many cows for the bull, look, let off the bull as a teaser and keep an eye on for the next 2 weeks, because each piece is just costing you €9.
And then we look at the advantages of heat detection. So maybe that's a good point to go and look at the heat detection collars. And we have a video here we recorded with Tom as well and Michelle talking about the advantages of the heat detection collars. Okay, so myself and Michelle are going to now look at the collar and how the collar works for heat detection and the practicalities associated with it. Michelle, can you explain to me what's on the collar? What is it? What are the different parts of it?
Okay, so the technology of the collar is all inside this casing here. It's waterproof casing. When you put a collar on the cow, you need this behind her left ear. So this is what we aim to do. The weight is down the bottom, so it keeps it in place all the time because cows are going to rub and scratch off things. So we need it to stay in place. So when it's on the cow for 7 days and you have heat and health data at that point. It'll send from a radio frequency, usually channel 19, up to the controller. The controller then makes sense of the data and sends it back down to your phone. So the whole point of it is before you put on your first cluster that you know exactly who's an estrus, who's bulling, who's sick, who's whatever information you need.
Michelle, this basically measures movement, is a lot of it, and what the cow was doing during the day and rumination. And it's that data and the changes in that data. Is it fair to say that that's the changes on that cow from a day-to-day basis and also where she fits in with the herd average?
Yeah, so it measures 9 different animal behaviours, and rumination is the best feature we have to show us if a cow is happy and healthy. And any change in her rumination pattern is almost always meaningful. So when we look at, when we're busy in heat and there's 5, 6, 7 cows coming in a day, there's plenty of activity. And we have to get asked the question, when it's getting quieter and cows are going in calf and there's only maybe 1 or 2 a day, it's measuring her, it's deviating her from her natural behaviour. It's not comparing her to a herd, it's comparing her to herself.
Okay, collars, it looks like they're the way forward. A lot of big herds have them now. So over the next few years, you would expect to see more and more herds using collars and ear tags for monitoring for heat.
Absolutely. It's the accuracy, and if you couple that with the simplicity, so if you think of what goes on in the back rooms of these technologies, they're phenomenal. They'll tell you if a cow is sick, if she needs to be inspected, if she's distressed, if she's heat, if she's an estrus. The information that you have at your fingertips, and it's just the fact that it's so objective. It's not subjective information, it's objective and it's accurate.
Okay, so we have a question here now from the audience about the panel's opinion on heat detection collars, and I suppose we look here at the general aids to heat detections. Certainly as a vet in practice, I'm seeing them a lot more. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago we saw our first clients getting them. Now they're getting a lot more common. I personally think they're a huge advantage for work-life balance. As I said earlier on, I keep a few suckler cows myself, and I put them on the cows this year. Obviously because of my day job, I'm not around there all day, and it's a difficulty to pick up cows in heat. Dorian, what's your view on these collars?
Well, I think anything that laid heat detection is to be welcomed. And I think if you look at dairy herds at the moment, if you have collars combined with a drafting system, do you know what I mean? They really will help herd owners. If a herd owner is exceptionally good already at the heat detection, he probably won't gain a lot from it, but it'll definitely reduce labour and it's huge convenience for him. Because the first 3 weeks of the breeding season, when the heifers are being mated as well, can actually be quite stressful. However, for herd owners that have poor enough heat detection, poor enough 6-week calving rate, and that are short to labour on the farm, it'll definitely will improve the efficiency, and they will pay for themselves, no question.
And there's no doubt the challenges now as herds have got bigger. If you're milking 200 cows, which isn't an unusual number at the moment, by the time you get up in the morning, get the cows in, milk them, feed the calves, and you're probably still feeding a few calves at this stage, you're supposed to be heat detecting 5 times a day. It's not really practical on any normal farm at the moment.
Yeah, and if you take a 200 cow herd and during the breeding season, you really need someone else milking. because it's a full-time job actually reading the tail paint and making sure you can actually get them drafted.
Topping up the tail paint if you're having it, and sorting out cows. And look, Michelle, maybe you'll be the best person to comment on this. You'll be milking cows, jumping up and down out of the pit to try and get that cow that's bulling and make sure she doesn't get out to the field with the rest. What's your opinion, I suppose, more as a dairy farmer than actually working for Sense Hub?
Yeah, I think, Donal, there's a big capital expenditure with any kind of this kind of monitoring technology. And when we were looking at it first about 6 or 7 years ago, we actually were thinking, God, it's a big expense, it's a lot of money, can we afford it? We can't. Now we look at it and we go, we couldn't afford not to have it, because what it does, it drives the profitability in your farm, whatever way you dress it up. And if you think of Dorian's point there about the drafting system, no matter how quiet you are with cows in a parlour, if you have to get the third or fourth cow and just draft her out yourself manually, no matter how quiet you are with them, you upset the whole lot of them. So this is just a natural flow. They're happy to go. You can have a 3-way drafting system. They go straight, left or right, so whatever way you want them. But there's been a huge explosion this year, Donal, and labour is a big one. Like, we've people that have absolutely fantastic submission and conception rates, and they're still buying it. And they're buying it for the health reason as much as the heat we find now, because they just cannot plough that resource into it all the time. The resource isn't there just to be looking at them 5 times a day for 20 minutes or whatever your strategy is.
There's too much else to be done every day.
Absolutely.
Kevin, your comments on them, and maybe thinking as well about, as Michelle mentioned, the health monitoring benefits.
I think the health it's an amazing technology, really. I go back to the first time I came across them with a client of ours. He rang me and he said that he had a sick cow, that he got an alert on his phone, and could I call out to him? And I said I could, I'll go straight away. He said, no, wait a while, I'm actually half an hour away from the farm. I haven't even seen the cow yet, so wait for an hour. So I arrived on the farm at the same time. Just as he was bringing in the cow, both of us looked at the cow, and the cow looked healthy. 30 seconds later, she's on the ground after dropping with grass technique. So the collar saved that cow's life. She wouldn't have been seen for another 4 hours. She wasn't due to be milked until 6 o'clock that evening. So it definitely saved that cow. So I think the technology is definitely something that's going to develop in all aspects of dairy farming. But on the heat detection side, especially for this time of year when there isn't a whole pile of activity going on, breeding activity going on, it can be hard to pick up cows. So the collars are going to pick up the change in activity and change in rumination. So it's more accurate than just eyeballing the cows. Now, obviously there's an expense involved, and there is alternatives with the vasectomized bulls and tail paints, but definitely on herds with substantial scale, I think the collars are a good idea.
Michelle, you want to come in there?
One point there about the accuracy. The biology of a cow, whether she's in Tipperary or Timbuktu, is the same, and we've 6.5 million cows being monitored worldwide. So we've a serious machine learning algorithm behind it. And when you put a collar on a cow, you get a digital footprint, as I said in the video, for this cow. So it's comparing her to herself. So it's not comparing her to the herd average. So that's what brings its accuracy.
Okay, another question comes in there to maybe a little bit touching on the accuracy. Does the system pick up silent heats? And I suppose it's important to look there and say, well, what is a silent heat? I did some work with dairy cows when I was in college. I worked on a big dairy farm, and we had plenty of help. There was somebody out heat detecting at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you'd often have a cow or a heifer to be showing signs of heat at 6 o'clock, and that'd be it. Where does the collars fit in with silent heats?
So we've an accuracy of about 97%, 96, 97%, and it's looking at her. So it's looking at any deviation from her normal behaviour. So if you have a question mark over, you just look at what way she's behaved in the last 24 hours. The system takes information off her every 60 seconds and sends it back to the controller every 20 minutes. So you can analyse her behaviour.
Kevin, silent heats?
Yeah, look, as I was kind of alluding to there, this time of the year, if you don't have cows in similar stages of the cycle, you get less activity, less mounting activity. A cow might only be mounted, for 30 seconds of the entire cycle. So if you're looking around, or if you're out mowing silage, you won't pick that up. So I think it'd be great for those sort of silent heats. They're not truly silent. It's just they're not expressing them as much as you'd expect. So I think the collars or the teaser bulls are definitely going to pick them up better than the human eye.
I know, Dorian, I've certainly seen you before talk about the number of mounts you'd expect to see at this time. So now we've we've our second serve gone into a lot of cows. We're 6-7 weeks into the breeding season. In 100 cows, how many mounts are we expecting to see on a cow in heat?
Oh, sure, Donald, in the first 3 weeks, each cow in heat would probably have about 50 mounts. Do you know what I mean? Because there were 5 on a day, and you'd see cows absolutely skinned and reddened and the paint completely gone off of them. Now the paint is actually building up in them, and with about 2 cows in heat, we're probably down to about 10 or 12 mounts. You know what I mean? So the level of mounting has gone way down. You know what I mean? And also, you get way more sexual activity in a group when there's a lot on, because you have the cows coming on in the group, you have the cows that's on in the group, and the cows that's just going off in the group. And you go out now 6 weeks after the breeding season, you won't see these groups of cows anymore. You know what I mean? Because you'd see there, if you went out at 9 o'clock at night there in the first 3 weeks, there could be 3 or 4 groups of cows activity out there in the field. You know what I mean? And if you take a large herd inside an 18-acre field, trying to go around to the 4 groups.
Yeah, it's not easy. And then even to see the numbers of what cows are bulling, and you see a cow mounting and she's away off in the distance. And like when you have 200 cows, there's very few farmers now that can tell you the number of every cow they have in a 200 cow herd. The numbers have just got too big.
And the worst thing is thinking you know the number.
And getting it one wrong or a digit the wrong way around.
Yeah.
I suppose later on we're going to look at heifers, and we're going to look at bulls, particularly with heifers, because Tom's bull was out with his heifers on that day. But we will talk about bull power, but how about vasectomized bull power? If you are using vasectomized bulls in the bigger herds, how many vasectomized bulls do you need?
I suppose it all depends on the bull and his work rate. Do you know what I mean? Because if you take dairy bulls or Jersey cross bulls, those vasectomized bulls, you'll never get to the end of them. Right? And bulls in their first season are very suitable to be left off with maiden heifers, but with a large herd of cows, you really need a bull in its second season. So if you take 200 cows, do you know what I mean, at the very start of the breeding season, where you have 10, 12, 15 cows on a day, tail paint works very well then. Right? But then after that, you need to let off your vasectomized bulls. Right? And if the vasectomized bull has to go around to each of the 200 every day, do you know what I mean? And in the second 3 weeks, do you know what I mean?
So, Dorian, it's not the number of cows that are going to come in, it's the number of cows in total out in the field that
That's
really
right,
matters.
he's to check them all for a start, right? And then he works, do you know what I mean, with the ones that's actually on. So that way, so at the second or third year, vasectomized bull, if his temperament is still quite good, is absolutely super for large herds. But then dairy herd owners hate keeping a bull for the second or third season. They want him for about 6 weeks.
What are you going to do with him? Where does he go? Where does he live? Like,
and
where does he live for the winter? Is always a big problem.
It is. And then they only want him for 6 weeks. And then if he gets injured in the first week, he's out for the season.
Yeah. Look, I think every farm has a different requirement, and every farm situation is different. And as a farmer, if you go and talk to your vet, they'll be able to advise you, and from their own experiences, what they see on other farms, they'll be able to say, what are the options available to you? Kevin, what's your thinking on the vasectomized bulls?
On the vasectomized bull, Donald, I'd say every herd owner will get benefit from them. And now is a great time for a vet to be vasectomizing bulls for next year. And the one thing I'd say of vasectomized bulls is fit them with a chin ball. As I've seen some herds, they have vasectomized bulls out and no chin ball on them.
And especially in your second or third season, vasectomized bulls.
Absolutely, he'll just pull her and walk away from her.
Exactly. Kevin, what would your thoughts be on the vasectomized bulls?
I think they're crucial. They're not needed for the first 3 to 4 weeks of the breeding season, in my opinion. I think there's enough activity that the cows themselves will pick themselves out. But after that, when the numbers are dwindling, I think the teaser bull is crucial in a lot of farms. And like Dorian says, I do a lot of them in August, September, before at around time that maybe they're thinking of being castrated. I get the farmer to pick out the strongest bull calf that he has. We do the operation, and then he's safe to run with the heifers for the winter. It's very easy to keep him. So I think, doing them in August, September is a great time to actually do the operation.
I think you do make a good point, though. It's the strongest bull calf you want to be doing, not the weak one or one that had something wrong with him as a calf. He won't be good enough to do it next spring when you let him out. It has to be a good and Dorian, you mentioned jerseys. Jerseys are probably the best.
They are, especially for large herds. You just never get it in them. But as Kevin says, the important thing is to do it August, September, so he won't bull the heifers across the winter. And you don't want to pick out a fella that didn't drive it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He wants to be as good as the heifers or better.
Absolutely, because what we want is a sexual athlete for that 6 weeks.
Okay, we did have another question there on the use of collars on heifers, but maybe before we go and look at that question with Michelle, we might go to the video where we looked at Tom's heifers out in the field. So we're here now with Tom's heifers. At this stage, these heifers have been through 2 rounds of AI, and we'd be hoping that most of them are in calf. Tom has 2 stock bulls running with the heifers to try and get the few stragglers in calf. So I suppose when you look at that, Dorian, when do we let the stock bulls out with the heifers?
I think, Donald, that's a very interesting question, because the first thing is a lot of the time with the stock bulls, it's a virgin stock bull we're letting out with the maiden heifers. So the first thing we have to make sure is the bull can actually mate. So if Tom hadn't seen the bull mating inside or in a small paddock, he needs to watch the bulls out with the heifers to make sure they can mate. That is the very, very first thing. The second thing then is, before we let out the bulls, is how many empty heifers are we likely to have. And what some herd owners are doing is they're synchronising the heifers, then they're letting off the bulls for the next 16, 17 days, putting in the heifers, putting on scratch cards, taking away the bulls to avoid injury, picking up heats and AI them for the next 4 to 5 days, and then letting off the bulls, when they know then each young bull has only to pick up less than 5 or 6 heifers.
And that's perfectly fine. He'll be
Yes.
he'll be perfect with that. Kevin, we all talk about fertility testing the bull. It's important. There's obviously no point in letting out a bull that's infertile. When should the bull be fertility tested?
Well, people just have to remember that that test is a snapshot in time. So the closer to the time that the bull is needed is the best time to do the test. So, you know, you need to, if he's being left out with the heifers next week, there's no point in relying on a test that took place in January, because a lot of it could have gone wrong in that length of time.
As close as possible when we want to use them.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Is it a big deal?
It's very simple procedure to get it done. It just, like, it's very important that you can check that he has live sperm going into the heifers, because all the mating in the world isn't going to get a heifer in calf if he's firing blanks. So it's quite important to do it.
But as Dorian's already referred, it's important to make sure that the farmer actually watches and make sure that the bull actually will go and make the heifer.
Yeah, the fertility test itself doesn't measure that. All it does checks for that he has the right anatomy for the job, and that his sperm quality is good enough to do the job. So there still requires a farmer to actually witness the service behaviour.
And the important thing, I think, Kevin, is that get your fertility test done before he goes off, but really monitor him then. If he runs a bit of temperature, if he's off form, if you have to, do you know what I mean? If you just think he's not right.
Anything at all, any stress will put him off his game. That's fair to say?
Absolutely, Donald. And especially young bulls that lose a lot of weight and get lethargic, they're the ones you really need to test.
Okay, just when we talk about stress, we talked a lot about with the cows about nutrition. Is nutrition an issue with the heifers?
Oh, absolutely, Donald, because we want these heifers to be gaining 20 kilos every month. Do you know what I mean? And some of the younger heifers, we probably need them to gain in 30 kilos a month. So we have to make sure they have top quality grass in front of them.
And would it be fair to say when grass gets tight, heifers get squeezed?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, because
So-
they don't see it in the bull tank. They'll see the cows in the bull tank dropping, the protein percent dropping. They'll see nothing in the heifers and they think they look okay.
Yeah. Now, we've talked a lot today about technology as well and about the use of collars, but in lots of cases, farms have expanded. Heifers are often put away to an out farm. How is this going to work, Michelle, on an out farm?
Okay, so you need power and internet for this technology to work. If you don't have power and internet, we have a solution in terms of a solar panel, and a lot of farmers will put it on the back of a car trailer and just drive it around to where the heifers are. And it doesn't matter if you're in China, it'll use a thing called a VPN, a virtual private network, to send the information back. It's a separate set of eyes on your out farm, and it'll send it back to the controller in your main yard for processing.
So the heifers don't have to come near the yard at all?
Absolutely not, no.
Okay, that's very useful to know, I think. We talked about vaccination and health. Is there anything we should be doing at this stage, Kevin, with the heifers?
Like with the cows, we want to have their vaccination programs up to date, ideally before the breeding season, so that they don't get any setback in the middle of the breeding season. And depending on your grassland and what your dosing strategy was as calves, the yearling heifers may well need to get a dose this time of the year as well, just to make sure that they don't pick up lungworm or stomach worm.
Okay. I think at this stage, what I'd be saying to everybody out there is, if you think of the questions you want us to answer, we're going to have a live question and answer session at the end of this, and you can send in the questions, anything you think might be relevant that you'd like to see answered. Okay, so we answered the question about can these collars be used on out farms with heifers. Another question we had in relation to these collars, so we might just cover now before we move on, Michelle, is there a difference in the tags and the collars?
There's a difference. The main difference, they measure the same 9 behaviours and an abnormal behaviour on top of it. So they measure through jaw movement and hide movement. Slightly different, but they report the same as each other. The one main difference really is the collars would last minimum 7 years and the tags minimum 3 years. So there's a cost difference.
Obviously a collar, if you cull a cow out of the herd, you can move the collar onto another cow. Can you do the same with the tags?
Yes, you can reassign the tag.
So you can take out the tag and put into a new one.
Absolutely.
Okay. In that video, we looked at, I suppose, 2 major groups of cattle. One group was obviously the maiden heifers, but the other big group we looked at there was the bulls and the importance of stock bulls. So Dorian, maybe over to you first. You breed Limousin stock bulls. What's important?
Okay, I think the big thing for dairy farmers at the moment is they have the bulls left off with the maiden heifers. So if we focus on the maiden heifers first, Donald. So the first question is, and that's what I'd like, for Kevin now to do a scan mid-season to know how many heifers have I less than 30 days in calf, as that will quickly tell me what's the ratio needed for my bull. Second thing is make sure my bull is fertility tested, but also make sure the bull can mate. Because some bulls, it can actually take them 3 weeks to cop on what to do, and you've lost that actually 3 weeks. Then, if you feel it's a young bull and the bull has lost a lot of weight and becoming lethargic, what you will find is those bulls will go infertile very quickly. Right? You have a couple of different options. If they're in the outside place, you could put scratch cards in the heifers, you could put the chin ball in the bull to monitor them. Or if you feel the bull is gone infertile and the semen test shows it, we know home the empty heifers, let them run with the cows, provided there aren't too many of them there. So that's why I really like a scan, at this time of the year. And if your bull is out, longer than 25, 30 days, if you just did 10 or 12 days AI, you may get early indications, of what the fertility of the bull is like. Then with the cows, and the same thing with the heifers, the big issue with them is how many empty cows, what is the herd size and how many empty cows have you? Right, because if you take a mature bull, he'll cover 20 empty cows. A young bull will probably just cover less than 10.
20 empty cows is 1 a day.
20 empty cows is 1 a day, Donald. Right? And if you take a mature bull out there and he's to check 100 cows every day, to mate 1 every day, that is a lot of work. So you watch that bull for lameness, you make sure he's active, and especially the young bulls, you actually watch them for actually losing weight. And what I'd always do before I'd let off a bull, when I'd let off the bull, it takes him a bit of time to settle into his routine, AI for the next 10 to 14 days. Because you're going into your short gestation sires, and you'll make sure those cows go in calf. It's a belt and braces job.
Okay, Dorian, you talked about the lameness in the bull. Watch out for lameness. When you have a bull walking up and down after the cows every day, coming in and out the parlour, herds have got bigger, walks have got longer, and the bull is often jumping on the cow as he's walking up, hard on his feet. Anything we can do?
No, it's tough, Donald, especially when they come off the cow awkward and you get those dirty drops in the front feet. Right, one thing you could do is if you have a very large herd and you're rotating the bulls, feed them in the paddock and trying to train them to stay in the paddock. And they will actually do that. As if you can keep them off the roadway, they will work much better.
And a bull is easy to train. Like a bucket of meal will sort out a lot of problems.
Absolutely.
And it'll help him as well because, especially if grass is tight, the cows have all the grass ate, the bull is running around looking for these cows. He doesn't have time to eat, and by the time he realises he needs to eat, the grass is all gone.
Absolutely.
Okay. Kevin, you fertility test a lot of bulls. I do myself as well. A year or two ago, a farmer came to me in July and he brought a bull to me to be fertility tested. He was doing no AI, only had a bull. He only had maybe 60 cows. The bull was infertile and not a single cow and calf. What do you advise about fertility testing bulls? When is the right time to do it?
Look, obviously it's close to the start of the breeding season is the best possible time. Just because he did it last year and he was past it last year doesn't mean he's going to be fertile this year. It's a good indication, but it doesn't replace the need for getting him done before the breeding season. And then, as Dorian says, if you had any suspicion that he was off form or lame or anything like this, I would recommend getting him done. It is possible for a bull to be fertile at the start of the season and start firing blanks shortly after. It's also a big thing I feel is that we often get a lull in the spring of calving, when the AI stops and the natural service begins, that you have maybe a fortnight there around Patrick's Day, around this time of the year, for the breeding this time of the year, something goes wrong. And I think it's a lot of time it is bull power is wrong. I think that people don't realise that 2 cows in a day for a bull is a lot of work, and the third and fourth cows
he just has too much to do.
Yeah, and it just his reserves there. He doesn't have enough semen left to bull them all. To make sure that they have the same fertility rate. So that's where the AI, I think, working in tandem with the stock bull this time of year, works very well.
Dorian, can a bull have a favourite cow? If there's 4 cows bulling, can he ignore 3 and just look after one?
One thing you have done is a dominant bull. He can actually mind 2 cows that's bulling for himself. So you could have 2 bulls out in the field. One of them is dominant, and he may not be the most fertile one, and he'll mind 2 cows for himself in heat. So every day, if there's 1 or 2 cows in heat, he'll keep them for himself and keep away the subordinate bulls. So one way to actually get over that is rotating bulls. So if you have 2 bulls, either 24 hours on, 24 hours off, and they're resting and eating for the 24 hours on and off, not running up and down inside the wire when the cows are passing.
He really has to be put in the shed.
Absolutely. Put him in the shed, good straw bed, and feed him. And the big advantage of that is you're reducing down wasted matings. You're avoiding bulls getting injured, because bulls will only fight, when there's cows bulling. But also, you're maximising the 2 bulls. You have the dominant bull over a subfertile bull. And I often see it, and Kevin said it there, because he was okay last year doesn't mean he's okay this year. I've often seen herds with 2 Angus bulls. The really fertile guy has got cross, got rid of him. The herd owner doesn't know that the other guy was subfertile, and he has him with a young bull this year. And get caught. That happens year in, year out, especially 2 bulls of the same breed.
Certainly every year we all see disasters with bulls. Kevin, you see it, I see it. And what do you say to a farmer in July when he figures out the bull is infertile and, there's no or very few cows in calf? It's a very difficult thing to come back.
It is, and where we're now the 10th of June, we can do an awful lot. Like our 24 hours on, 24 hours off, AI, continually, for the next 2 to 3 weeks when the bull has gone out. And as Kevin says, every day there's more than 2 cows in heat, AI them anyway.
Okay, if you do AI them and the bull is running with them, how do we decide what we're going to register that calf to?
That's kind of a secondary consideration. The first thing is to get her in calf. But if you have an Angus bull, you could put her in calf to Hertford. As if you take that Hertford bull there, Fisher profile, he's nearly minus 3 days in gestation. Nearly plus 10 kilos of carcass.
It's very easy.
And if you have a Hertford bull, put an Angus in it.
Yeah, that's certainly a good solution. Earlier on there, Michelle, you talked about the dangers of a bull and why you decided to get rid of a bull. But Dorian, any tips to how we manage this bull? And we've all come across these cross bulls. What can you do to manage a bull and make sure he doesn't get cross?
I think the first thing is to make sure a bull doesn't get cross is always treat him with respect, but always make sure you're the boss. So every time you're handling the bull, when you purchase him and bring him home, put him in with a pal, so he's never on his own inside in the pen. As bulls get very dominant in a pen, they're trying to protect the pen. Always put him with another animal.
A cull cow?
Cull cow or free Martin heifer. We all have little bits and pieces around the place, that we shouldn't have. And they're great for actually going in with the bull. Okay. The other thing then is when you're going, get the bull used to you and associate him with favourable things, like giving him a bit of meal every day, and just build up the relationship with him. But every time you approach him, make sure the gate behind you is opened, and that you have a stick. Because if you go into the pen and he puts down the head and you back out, it's 1-0. And you go in the second day, it's 2-0. While if you have a stick, a tiny little tap in the nose, he backs off, then he goes eating the nuts, just scratch his back with the stick. So you have to dominate the bull. Right? But the most important thing done, as soon as he changes his attitude, is up the ramp.
Absolutely say that. I had a bull myself earlier on this year, and I say I keep a few cattle, and I had a vasectomized Angus bull, and overnight he just turned dangerous, and I have 3 young kids, and I just rang the lad who gets rid of cattle for me. I just rang him and said, we need to get rid of this bull, and he was gone the next day. And I personally think that's the right way to do, to try and get rid of him as quick as you can like that. A couple of more questions come in. Vaccinating bulls that are coming on farm, a big biosecurity risk. When we have bulls coming in, what should we do with them? Maybe that's a question for you, Kevin.
I think they need to become part of your herd's normal vaccination protocol, you know. So if you're vaccinating for IBR and lepto and salmonella, the bull needs to get vaccinated for all these as well. So ideally, a big problem in Ireland is that people buy the bulls nearly as they need them, and the vaccinations really haven't kicked in by the time he's introduced to the other animals in the herd. So we possibly do need to change our practice and start buying our bulls earlier, so that we have time to isolate them and vaccinate them and not introduce to our herd until the vaccinations have kicked in. But as regards their fertility, I've known of no paper that says the vaccination has any negative effect on fertility.
Okay, when should we be getting the bull?
As early as possible. You know, you get him used to, like, you're putting into a stressful situation when you buy a bull. So at least if you buy him in February or March, he has 2 months to acclimatise to what's going on in your farm, the sounds, the practices, you know, everything in cattle is about reducing stress. And I think that the longer you have him, the less stress is going to be for the bull.
Okay. Michelle, another question came in here. Does the bull with the herd confuse the collars?
No, the answer is no. When we were in Tom Allen's farm that day, he had ear tags on those heifers, and he had 2 bulls with them. It's quite handy at the end, you know, if you're putting heifers out to an out farm and you've no handling facilities, you might have no choice but to put a bull out. Always remember the system is measuring her, not what's going on around her, but her and her behaviour.
So no issue.
No issue.
Okay.
They're actually quite good on at actually monitoring bulls. Because if you have stopped AIing and have the collars on, you're constantly seeing cows repeating.
That's a concern. You certainly need to be looking at the bull at that stage.
Absolutely.
Okay. We've one more video to go to tonight on Tom's farm, and this is to look at his 2021 calves, which are going to be the cows in 2023. Okay, so we've come up here to look at Tom's calves. Tom's calves at this stage are probably in the sort of 3 to 4 months old. We don't tend to think of this so much at a time to be concentrating on fertility, but do remember that in 2 years' time, we're going to be looking at these cows out in the field, milking, trying to get them back in calf. So Kevin, what should we be looking at in the dairy calves this time of the year?
Well, you want your dairy heifers to have a good, consistent growth rate. You know, 700 grams a day to make sure that they reach target. Obviously, to achieve that, you have to get nice grass in front of them, a bit of meal to keep the rumen function right. We'll always be worried this time of the year with vitamin B deficiency or the summer scour syndrome. And obviously, you have to keep parasites in mind. So all of those you have to really keep on top of at this time of the year.
Doreen, looking at the grass here, what do you think of Tom's grass at this stage?
It's probably like a lot of places, you know what I mean, is grass has gone ahead of most people now at this stage, you know what I mean? And basically, because we're nearly into cover here of over 2,000, so basically for calves, what we want is to keep moving them onto fresh grass as often as we possibly can, because Tom's cows below what we saw about 550 kilos, so we'd want to, the heifers this time next year, do you know what I mean, or in April, May, when we're bulling them at 330. So these calves need to gain, as Kevin says, 20 kilos a month.
Yeah, and Kevin, you referred to the summer scour syndrome. How important is diet in relation to that?
Huge. I think it's a product of our success of growing grass. I think quality grass that cows get now is way ahead of what they used to, but their rumens aren't quite ready for it, and I think that's a big issue. I think they need to, you know, some guys are letting the calves out a little bit too early. They're not fully ruminants by the time they're left out, and they're just not able to digest this quality grass. So we just need to be, you know, maybe adding roughage to the diet, or making sure that the quality of the concentrates that they're getting.
Concentrates are probably the most important.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
How much concentrates should these be getting at the moment?
Sure, a lot of them are probably getting 1.5 kilos, 2 kilos.
Michelle, you have cows at home. What do you think of these calves?
I think they're a good, even bunch of heifers. This is what you want to see. Like when we talk about compact calving all the time, I think one of the things we need to bear in mind is we need an even bunch in terms of vaccination. We need a healthy bunch. So the importance of vaccination cannot be understated in this. You know, to keep them right.
What would be the vaccines we'd be given, Kevin?
Yeah, you can start all of them really. IBR, once they're over 3 months of age, they can get the IBR vaccine. You may as well start with the lepto this time of the year, because it's in the course of their lifetime, it's only costing you an extra 1 vaccine. So like if you didn't do them as calves, you'd have to be doing them twice as heifers anyway. So at least if the earlier to get the vaccine, the earlier they're protected.
I know above in Tullamore we saw a lot of problems with pneumonia this year with a lot of wet nights and cold nights. Like if you let calves out this time of the year and it rains, they literally lie down in wet grass and they get cold. Is pneumonia vaccination important?
It is important. What happens here in Thomas Place, they get the intranasal vaccine at less than 3 weeks of age, close to maybe 10 days to fortnight old. We tend down here to find that gets them over the risk period, and then coming into the autumn time again, it's time to give them a booster for that.
And we're now in 3rd of June. These are looking at their first parasite treatment.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Once they're out 3 weeks at all, it's possible to start getting lungworm and stomach worm problems.
First signs we'll see is a bit of coughing.
Once they're coughing or ducty tails, they need to be keep an eye on, and coccidiosis is often an issue as well in these cows down here at this time of year, especially if the cows are going out to the same paddock year on year.
So would it be fair to say the moral of the story is if you see anything starting to go wrong, talk to your vet, come up with a solution then?
Talk to your vet, need samples, need a bit of history, just need to weigh up all the factors that could be involved.
Okay, the end of that there was when something goes wrong, talk to your vet. So we're going to use Kevin here as the vet in this example and say, Kevin, I got my first call there today of calves starting to scour at grass. Big issue over the last few years. We didn't see it 10 years ago, but this summer scour syndrome. Tell me about where are we with it?
Yeah, well, look, I suppose what is it first? Like we're finding a lot of it, and I think what you see is, especially maybe the later born calves, shortly after they get let out, they start wasting away in a severe scour. And you're talking about cows that need to come back in and get dripped to survive. So it's a really severe thing. It's not like maybe a parasite scour or something. It just happens overnight and they really waste. So like, there's a lot of theories about what is causing it. But I think in essence, it's a kind of, we're a victim of our own success in grass growing. I think that the grass that we're producing now is actually too good and too rich for animals that are not quite ruminants yet. The calves aren't born ruminants. They need to develop, and their rumen needs to develop. And to develop that, they need milk. They need good quality concentrates. And if they get out on this rich grass, really high protein, high energy grass, I don't think their system is able to deal with it. Now, there's other theories that it could be due to copper, could be due to kind of the oils that the grass is producing as well. But certainly it's down to the change in the way we rear our calves now. So the solution is probably, try and not let your cows out onto grass until they're 100 kilos or more, so that they're proper ruminants by the time they can deal with the grass then.
Is it similar to transition cows, transition cow management, where we need to get our dry cows moved onto the milking cow diet more gradually? Does the same apply here? Have we can't take a calf that's inside drinking milk and hopefully meal and maybe eating a bit of hay or straw and suddenly turf her out on the best of quality green grass and expect her to cope with that change. Is that it?
I think that's a lot of the problem. And as I say, you find it in your younger, the later born cows, because it's just human nature. We're kind of getting sick of the sight of them inside the shed, and they get turfed out. And as I said, then in this really good quality grass, they just can't cope with it. And as you say, like they need time to adapt to the new diet they're getting. I think it's related to, we're seeing increase in CCN or vitamin B deficiency. I think that's related, because what's going on is that they're technically getting a type of acidosis inside in the rumen, which is killing the microbes that produce vitamin B. All these things are linked. Now, there has been good advancements, I think, in the last couple of years with feed additives that are helping to kind of, I suppose, condition the gut a bit and make sure that the rumen microbes are a lot healthier, and it counteracts some of this. But I suppose it's just, when we were thinking about it, it really is getting back to how calves were reared in our youth. They're kind of nearly neglected in a way. They're put out into the haggart or into the small paddock with the rough grass. Now there's no such thing as rough grass in any farm. It's all really high quality stuff, and that's where the problem is.
That brings me back onto a question that came in there earlier on about grass. And like you said, when we were growing up as children, the calves were in maybe an orchard or something like that, or the field or the corner field that never got reseeded, and tended the grass was gone quite strong by the time they went out. We have got very good at growing grass. And Dorian, maybe you might come in here too. There's been a big push towards more energy to get into the cow, get more milk out of her. Is there enough minerals in those? Is there enough minerals in that grass? Is that an issue? Have we lost sight of maybe some of the smaller details as we manage the grass growth?
Yeah, definitely in dairy herds. If you compare the dairy cow, Donald, I mean, because the vast majority of dairy cows, I mean, all along have been up to 4 to 5 kilos of ration. I mean, they're probably down now to 2 to 3. While if you look at the maiden heifer that's out since, I mean, mid-February, 1st March, they have actually received no minerals. And I think what herd owners really need to do is to grass sample, I mean, their farm and split it into different paddocks, take grass samples and get it tested for minerals. And you'll quickly build up a profile of the farm to see what you need to supplement with. Because we don't want deficiency, we don't want toxicity, I mean, we want to actually optimize the minerals.
And you made a good point there about the different parts of your farm. Where I'm working, it's not uncommon to have a farm with gravelly soil, gravelly sandy soil at one side of the farm, and as you move towards the bottom end of the farm, to be moving more towards into boggy ground, which is, I suppose, synonymous with high molybdenum toxicity affecting copper. And I suppose in recent years we've looked a lot more at this, and we see that there's a lot more issues other than molybdenum, like sulfur and iron, affecting it. So I think an important point there is every farm is different, and you should look with your own vet, look at your farm, take blood samples, take feed samples, silage and grass, and see what you need to supplement. I think that is a big important point. We're getting near the end of the night now, so if anybody else has any more questions that they'd like to send in to us, now is the time that we're going to do our best to answer all the questions we have.
And I suppose one thing now, Donald, if we look at both calves and if we look at both maiden heifers, I mean, on farms, when herd owners get a bit of a break now after the silage and so forth, I mean, being done, one thing that's a very good thing to do is get in their calves and the maiden heifers into the yard for a day, take dung samples, I mean, for both parasites and coccidia, and weigh them. I mean, to actually monitor the growth. Because especially from July on for those bulling heifers, group them then by size and start feeding them on. Don't wait till November, December, I mean, to start feeding on dincalf heifers. Start in July, and that's a very good thing to do.
And that'll certainly help the weaker ones who have smaller mouths catch up by being able to eat a bit more meal if you're feeding them meal out at grass.
Absolutely.
Kevin, Dorian referred to there taking dung samples and getting them in. The way we're going now, we want farming to be more managed, put in things to control it, prevent disease before it happens. What else should we be considering? Vaccination, wormings?
Look, vaccination is an obvious one there. It's like we're not going to have the same access to antibiotics that we used to have. So it's all about prevention. So like vaccination is a clear. We see it in humans at the moment how the COVID vaccination is working. It's the same with pneumonia vaccines or lepto vaccines or salmonella vaccines, IBR vaccines. They are effective if they're used properly. So I would be of the opinion that we should start vaccinating our cows, in their first year of life for say even the lepto, which is traditionally more seen as a fertility vaccine, but in the course of the animal's lifetime on your farm, by starting them as a calf, it's only costing one extra vaccine in its life. I think it's by getting them protected earlier, they're going to have less chance of getting a risk. Same with IBR, get them vaccinated earlier, get them into your herd program at an earlier age, it all benefits. The pneumonia vaccines, look, certainly different parts of the country will have different risk periods. Down our way, we vaccinate the cows maybe intranasally while they're housed. They don't tend to get too much pneumonia during the summer, and then they have a severe risk period in kind of October, November, December. So we like to vaccinate them again maybe just in October, maybe at the same time as dosing, just to make sure that they're covered again for that peak risk period. The first 4 weeks of housing is really the risk period in those maiden heifers.
I think an important point to make there, though, every farm is different, and as farms have got bigger, a lot of calves and heifers move off the main farm to maybe silage aftergrass, which is away from the farm. And we can put in different management practices, maybe use different doses with different residual activities to make it fit in with the farm management. There's no point in saying you need to dose every 3 weeks if they're gone to an out farm with very poor handling facilities. So we do need to look at each farm differently and come up with a plan that will work for that farmer. You'd agree?
Oh, absolutely. And as you said, like some cattle, their first time being left out is onto silage aftermath. Should be very low risk of parasites, so they may not need to be dosed until July or August, depending on the situation. But that's why talking to your vet is very important. They'll understand what is happening on your farm. You can explain what has happened in the past. They know the local weather conditions. Lungworm is very weather-dependent parasite, so we will know that after a dry spell, if we get rain after a dry spell, we're going to see a lot of lungworm. So all that sort of local knowledge, and you can't really design a parasite control system based on calendar for cattle anymore. We're going to have to try and start reducing the amount of dosing and dose animals that need dosing rather than dose the whole farm.
Okay. I'm just trying to catch up here on some questions that have come in. Michelle, collars on heifer calves?
Yeah, so you can put them on, there is a calf application, but it's really designed towards calves that are fed individually because it monitors how much they drink. So we would suggest putting them on from kind of 6 months of age onwards, but just bear in mind, just put them on when you need them. That's what I would suggest to you. So if it's a collar, just bear in mind you're going to have to loosen it as the heifer grows. If it's an ear tag, you just put it on and leave it on.
Okay. If I order collars today or ring you today and say, I'm interested in these, how long before I'd have the collars on my cows and working?
Okay, so what we do with anyone that's interested like that, we come out to your farm and just make sure it'll work on your farm. It does, by and large. We just want to make sure that it does. We want it to do what it says in the tin. So we do a thing called a site survey, and we'd submit that, and within 2 weeks then we could have the collars on your farm.
Okay. MSD are a big company, and they've bought other smaller companies, including this MSD Animal Health Intelligence. What else is coming?
So we get a lot of requests for a connected farm. That is certainly the buzzword in terms of technology on farm now. So we've a recent takeover with LIC. So we've taken over their software division, and we're very excited about what the future holds with that.
It'll be interesting to see what is coming. And I think things are changing rapidly. Another question, Dorian, is pregnancy testing on milk?
Oh, absolutely, because with milk recording it's very easy. Do you know what I mean? And once cow ID is right, it's very accurate. Do you know what I mean? At 30 days. So herd owners could do it now. Do you know what I mean? And any cow they think that's gone over 30 days, or they know it's gone over 30 days, check it for pregnancy. Do you know what I mean? And if it shows up negative, I mean, you still have an opportunity getting 2 services into her before now and into the breeding season.
Coming back to finding out early if there is a problem.
When you can do something about it.
Absolutely. No point in scanning or looking at pregnancy diagnosis out in September, October. At that stage, it's only culling. Look, we're getting near the end of the night now, so maybe looking at wrapping up, I'm going to go to Ollie and ask you for your 3 main tips, or a number of main tips, your 1 main tip for the night. What should a dairy farmer do now? What can he do for next year to make it a better breeding system breeding season next year, or a better finish to this year's breeding season? Dorian, I'll go to you first.
I suppose the big thing I focus on is a good finish to this year's breeding season. As we're now the 10th of June, we're just into the 17th of March calving, right? So the first thing I would do is, any cows that are not yet bred, synchronise them. Try and get 2 services into them. That's the first thing. The second thing then, I do an early scan. Do you know what I mean? And cows to see if they're pregnant, either through the milk, do you know what I mean? Or get out to your vet to pregnancy diagnose, because you're also checking cows that were actually missed. Then, before you let off the bulls, how many empty cows have you left? So try and up the heat detection, get the ratio right when you let off the bulls, and after letting off the bulls, AI for the next 3 weeks. And do not forget the maiden heifers in the outside place. Scan them now. How many of them are less than 25 days or empty? What's your ratio, the bull? Can your bull mate?
Okay, Kevin?
It'd be similar to Doreen. The early scan is crucial in my opinion. You can use it for nearly at judging when you need to dry off the cow. So if you scan now, you'll get a very accurate gestation length. obviously you want to try and identify those girls that have had early embryonic death or that have just not have been seen. So now I think is a very economic call that you can make to your vet. The money you spend now on fertility really pays off. Next one, I would go back to onto our bulls. We really have to monitor our bulls. You know, make sure we don't overwork them. Make sure that their health is good. And then going forward for next year, now's the time to start picking out your candidate for vasectomies. Now's also the time to make sure that your maiden heifer or your calves are actually growing well. It's very hard to pick them up if they're you know behind target now. They need to be gaining to 700 grams a day consistently from birth, weighing frequently just to see where they are. Feed them accordingly. Like the target weight for a heifer at mating start is between 300 and 330, depending on your cow type. You really need to get all your heifers to reach target. It's target, not average. You need like your worst effort needs to be at the 300 or 330, depending whether you're crossbred or pure Frisian. So now's the time to make sure that happens. Make sure that they're well fed. Make sure that your dosing strategy is correct and all the health prevention measures are taken on time.
And Kevin, a visit from you and to farm for the next 2 weeks, that'll give the herd owner the biggest return of investment of any visit all year.
It's probably the most profitable call for the farmer.
Michelle, you're milking cows at home, very relevant. Your take-home messages for tonight?
Absolutely. I think, you know, we hear a lot about sustainability, Donal, and from an environmental point of view, and while it's hugely important, sustainability from a farmer's point of view is equally important. And I think we need to expand through efficiency, so we need to have the right type of cows and the right days of milk. We need to drive efficiency and profitability and use technology to do that. It'll give you the right kind of data at the time that you need it so you can make the best decisions. Labour is a huge challenge, as we know, and the amount of time this can take out of your day and actually give you the accurate reports that you need. We always want to, you know, keep improving and increasing the genetic makeup of our herd. So we want to always narrow the gap between our best cow and our worst cow and bring it up on an upward scale. So think about AI and just you are in control of the genetics in your herd. And finally then, from an animal welfare point of view, I think we're in the spotlight about this as well, and we have a good story to tell, so we should tell it. This technology will allow you to pick up sick cows early, so you have a better clinical outcome. So it's better for the animal, for the farmer, and for the vet. Just one point there Kevin made is we can't underestimate the cost of morbidity or mortality on our farm. So it's just important to pick things up early and use our antimicrobials responsibly.
Thank you. So look, all that's left for me tonight is to thank a number of people. So mainly I'd like to thank our 3 experts: Dorian Carden from Munster AI, or Munster Bovine, Kevin O'Sullivan, Glass Lynn Vets and Excel Vets, Michelle Crowley, MSD Animal Health Intelligence. And most of all, I'd like to thank yourselves for coming on tonight and to watch. Without having you here to watch, these things wouldn't be worthwhile. So we look forward to doing more of these as parts of Excel Vet SkillNet going forward over the summer. And we'd like to wish everybody the best of luck with the second half of our breeding season this year. Thank you.